Back on the record, this is the people of the state of Colorado versus James Egan Holmes, case number 12 CR 1522. The records reflect that the defendant is present with his attorneys and the prosecutors are present as well. Just as a follow-up to the record that we made with respect to juror number 118 earlier today, so I was wrong. My staff has been checking that email address, and the only email from juror 118 related to this particular issue is from February 23, 2015, and the party should have a copy of it. And so I'm going to mark this as Court Trial Exhibit C-TR-121. It just says, "Hi, I am Juror 118 on this trial and have not been dismissed, but just realized that my son is graduating from Special Ops Civil Affairs in the Army the end of July. I hadn't thought about this until I saw my instructions to check after May 1 to see when I would need to be available for a 2-day group questioning session. That is when I realized that if I would be on this trial, I would have to miss my son's graduation. Is this something that would be considered as far as my being excused from this jury? Please let me know if it is and what I would need to provide to show this conflict. Thanks." And then it has her name at the bottom of it. During the break, she handed a note to my bailiffs that reads as follows, and we're marking the note as Court Trial Exhibit C-TR-120. "Sir, please don't change anything for me. I realize this trial is much more important than my issue. I don't want to put the victims or the defendant through any delays. Thank you respectfully." And then it is signed by her, and then it says Juror 118. So, in light of that additional record, I am inclined to keep with the plan to proceed without any delays. Does anybody else want to make any record at this time with respect to this issue? Mr. Brockler?
No, sir.
Ms. Brady? All right, thank you. All right, let's bring the jurors in, please. Mr. Brockler, you have 2 more witnesses this morning?
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll break for lunch at that time. Okay. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect the jury is back in the courtroom. Welcome back, folks. People may call their next witness. Mr. Brockler?
Karen Teeves, Your Honor.
Mrs. Steves, good morning. Can I have you raise your right hand so that I can administer an oath? You solemnly swear or affirm, under penalty of law, that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please be seated. Could you please tell us your full name and spell your first, middle, and last names?
Karen Ann Teeves, CarenAnnTeeves.
Mr. Brockler, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. With the court's permission, I'd like to publish previously admitted 2653.
You may do so.
Ma'am, who is this?
That is my son, Alex Teeves.
Thank you. I want to have a conversation with you about who your boy was and then the impact of his murder on you and your family, okay?
Yes.
But to begin, I want to start with really the beginning, and that is your family. Tell us your son's full name.
Alexander Charles Teeves.
What's the significance of his middle name?
His middle name, Charles, he's named after his paternal grandfather. My husband, Tom, was the last Teeves. So then when Alex came along, we decided to name him after his grandfather because just to carry on the name, because he was the last Teeves.
Ma'am, you mentioned Tom, your husband. How long have you been married?
We've been married 30 years this past March.
When was your son, Alex, born?
He was born in 1988, June 1st of 1988.
Was he your first?
He was our firstborn.
Do you have any after him?
2 more boys. 6 years later, we had Alex's brother, Thomas. Alex could not wait for a sibling. He was beyond overjoyed. And then after Tommy, Nicholas, and he was 15 months after Tommy.
Do you need a drink, ma'am?
Yes,
Take
please.
a moment.
Thank you.
In part to better understand who your son was and the impact of his murder, I want to ask you about his relationship with his brothers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Our middle guy, Tommy, simply adored Alex. Alex was 6 years older. He was almost like a second dad just because of his, he was just such a role model for Tommy. He looked up to him. He was such a great mentor for Tommy. They were so close. For being 6 years apart, they were just inseparable.
Was there an incident, a moment, Halloween for instance, that sort of marks how he would view his bigger brother throughout his life?
Yeah, most kids, at 2 years old, what do you want to be for Halloween? They'll pick their cartoon character, their favorite superhero. Tommy looked at me and he says, this year I want to be Alex.
How about your youngest son? Tell me about him.
Nick was born with special needs. We had him diagnosed at 1.5 with some special needs, and Alex was there with us, just helping the whole way along. Treated him just like he did Tommy, and actually helped him get to where he is today.
That relationship that Alex had with his youngest brother, the one you just described, did that help shape him into the man he became?
Oh, absolutely. Alex loved working with children. He he wanted to be a counselor, and in fact, he obtained that goal. He graduated with his master's in psychology and counseling, and as an intern, he worked in a school with kids that had a lot of special needs, in a school where these kids couldn't fit into a typical setting, school setting. And he would bring them into the weight room and teach them, you are a whole person. This isn't just about your mind, it's your mind and body, and they work together. And he taught them to respect themselves. Later on, I had the chance to speak to some of his former students that he counseled, and they told me that they pretty much saved their lives. He got them off of alcohol and drug addictions and made them appreciate their families.
You've talked about his two brothers from your family. Was he also a big brother to someone else?
In undergrad at the University of Arizona, he was a big brother to a young kid that had some family problems and some things he was struggling with.
To understand who Alex was as a man, as he's coming into his own, tell us about that relationship.
Well, he was in undergrad, and I know a lot of kids are out partying and doing this and that, and he loved his Arizona Wildcats.
Is that where he went
his
to college?
Yeah, he went to the University of Arizona in Tucson, and he just adored them. He was so passionate. He tried to go to every game, and he would not miss. But the one time he would miss, and this was multiple times, was because most of the games were on Saturday nights, and that's when he had the opportunity to have his little brother that he mentored. He would take him and give up going to his beloved games to take his little brother out to bowling or fiddlesticks or to the arcade or things like that to spend time with him.
Far from a one-off or an anomaly, was this just who your boy was?
That's who he always was, from when he could walk.
You talked a bit about his early commitment and then wanting to grow into a counselor that dealt with both mind and body. Was he someone that was into physical fitness?
Very much so. He loved working out. He loved doing things like the Tough Mudder, which is a very intense obstacle course where you have to jump into vats of ice water and climb mountains and run 10 miles. And it pushed you physically, and there's a sense of accomplishment at the end, and he loved to push himself.
Did he excel at athletics?
He did. He was a state champion wrestler in high school.
In Arizona?
In Arizona. He would, and Alex was just very, very laid back, but he had so much passion. We would sit there for hours during these wrestling tournaments, just hours and hours. And he would sit there and play on his little Game Boy. I mean, just play. And all the other kids are jumping around and doing push-ups and grunting, and getting ready to go into these matches. And Alex would just sit there, look around, play his little Game Boy, and then, okay, it's your turn, Alex. The other guy would get out, and Alex would just walk out, and they'd say, okay, go. And he would just take his opponent and just, pin him in the matter of seconds. And that's what he did every time. I mean, he just was so laid back, but he was fierce.
There's another incident from this time at Arizona, University of Arizona, that helps to mark your son's character, and I want to ask you about that too. Was there a car accident?
There was. In his sophomore year, him and 5 other friends were driving back from California. They went to Disneyland or something like that on their break. And the driver, there were six of them in a pickup truck, and the driver overcorrected and veered off the road into the desert. And this is a very isolated area, and they were fortunate enough to have someone behind them and he saw the whole incident, and the truck rolled 7 times, but luckily landed on its tires straight up. Tragically, one of the kids in the front seat was ejected from the vehicle and was laying in the desert. Everyone else in the vehicle was trapped, and the only one that could get out was Alex. And Alex is fiercely loyal to family and friends, and he just crawled through the broken glass out that back window to get help. He passed out in the back of the truck, but he tried really hard. The injuries were so bad that they had to bring in a chopper, and they took the boy that was ejected first, and Alex's injuries dictated that he was next, and he said, "No, don't take me, take her." And they said, "Okay, we'll take her," and they took her out. The chopper came back, and they said, "Alex, you have to go now," and he said, "No, take her." And they took yet another one ahead of Alex, whose injuries were not as crucial, and finally said, "Dude, you've got to go now." And they took Alex then, and Alex spent 2 days in ICU. And as he's in ICU, he spoke to my husband, and he said, "Dad, the boy who was ejected, his parents aren't here yet. They live in Georgia. Please, go sit with him. He needs you more than I do right now, because his dad and his mom aren't here yet." And so Tom did that, and he sat with that boy while his parents were on their way.
Now, there's a part of this story you didn't come to know until after your son's death.
We had to have three services for Alex.
And we'll get to those. But tell us about that meeting at one of them that helps fill in what happened at that hospital.
At the memorial service in Phoenix, a gentleman came up to us, and he introduced himself as the dad of that boy that was ejected from the vehicle. And we were like, "You didn't have to come. You're here all the way from Georgia." And he says, "You probably don't know this, but while my son was in the hospital, and this was probably 2 months, he said, your son sat with him every single day." And we had no idea that Alex did that. We would say, "Where are you going today?" He'd say, "Oh, I'm just going out." And he sat with this boy every day, and the dad told us everyone else had just moved on and gotten on with their lives, and Alex was here every day to sit with him and talk to him and read to him and help him in his recovery. That's just how Alex was.
Never told you.
No, we didn't know.
How did Alex get out here? How did he get out to Colorado?
He went to the University of Denver.
Why?
For his graduate studies for psychology and counseling, and he graduated in May of 2012 with his master's degree.
Approach the witness, Your Honor.
You may.
Ma'am, I'm handing you what's been marked as People's Exhibits 2654 and 2656. Can you take a look at those?
Yes.
Those are pictures of your son, yes?
Yes.
Do those fairly and accurately capture how he looked at about the time of his murder?
Yes, he always had this brilliant smile on his face. He just emanated joy, and this reflects that.
I'm going to move for the admission of People's 2654 and
Any
2656. Sorry, Your Honor. Into evidence.
Any objection to P-TR-2654 and 2656?
Nothing further.
All right, based on my previous rulings, P-TR-2654 and 2656 are admitted and may be published.
Ma'am, could you put up 2654, please? Tell us what we're looking at here, ma'am.
Part of his schooling, he had to give certain presentations, and this was one of them.
Is this sort of how he looked all the time?
The smile on his face, yes. The suit jacket and the white shirt, definitely not, no.
And thank you for that. Before we get to the next one, I want to ask you about that. Did your son have a certain issue with clothes?
He did. He pretty much loved and embraced everything in life except shirts and shoes. The moment he could release himself from a shirt and shoes, he would. It reminds me of a trip that we took to Hawaii. We're all in our minivan and we're running late. We've got 3 kids and a dog in the car, and we're trying to get to the airport, and we look back and Alex has no shoes on, and we said, well, you packed shoes, right? And he says, no, we're going to Hawaii. I don't need shoes. And I'm like, well, we have to go in an airport first to get to Hawaii, and he just felt that he didn't need shoes and decided to leave him home.
Had you seen your son in May of 2012 before his graduation?
I did.
Where?
He came home to visit his mom. Tom was going on a business trip, and he says, why don't you come visit your mom this month? And he said, I'd love to. And he came home, and we got to spend some time together.
I see 2656, ma'am. Tell us what this is.
That's Alex graduating with his master's degree from the university, from Denver University.
Do you remember in what he got his master's?
Psychology and counseling.
Were you able to be here for this?
He asked us not to. We happened to be in Hawaii, and he says, you know what, Mom, this is just a stepping stone for me. I want to go on to be a physical therapist so I can help people in mind and body, and I want you to come out for that. That's where I want you to be. So we said, okay, and I have no regrets. I just wish I hadn't listened to him with this one, but when I say I have no regrets, I have no regrets with our relationship. We spoke or text every single day. That included I love yous, and I appreciate yous, and thank God we had that relationship because I could look back and have no regrets about that.
Ma'am, we saw the picture of him graduating with his master's, and you had indicated that he mentioned to you that this was a stepping stone. Had he already applied for or begun the process of getting his PhD?
He did.
Tell us about that.
The summer in 2012, he was just starting. There was a couple makeup courses that he had to get under his belt before he started the program in the fall. And he was in the process of doing that in July of 2012.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Ma'am, I'm handing you what's been marked as People's Exhibits 2657, 4679, 4680, and 4681. Do you recognize what are in those photographs, ma'am?
Of course.
I know.
It's my beautiful boy. Always with a smile on his face.
Now, there are a couple of those pictures he is with another woman. Is that fair?
Yes.
Who is that?
That is Amanda Lindgren, the love of his life. He always dreamed of one day having a family, and he wanted it to last, and he wanted it to be right, and he wanted to make the right choice. So he didn't date a lot in his dating years. He was really waiting to find the person, and in fact he went to his high school senior prom with his best friend Nick, which we always get a kick out of. But he met her at the University of Denver when he started there, and they fell in love, and he was so happy.
How long were they together?
2 years.
Did he talk to you about her?
Oh, all the time. He adored her. He loved her. He told me just days before July 20th that she was the one and he was going to marry her.
These photographs that I've shown you, are they still fair and accurate representations of both your son and Amanda just prior to his murder?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to move for the admission of peoples 2657, 4679, 4680, and 4681 into evidence.
Nothing further?
All right, based on my previous rulings, P-TR-2657, 4679, 46880, and 4681 are admitted and may be published.
Ma'am, can you give us 2657, please? Can you tell us something about this picture?
He was so happy. This was on a trip to Hawaii that we decided to take Alex and Amanda on in December of 2011. Just the four of us, me, Tom, Alex, and Amanda.
Thank you. Can I have 4679, please? Is that Amanda?
Yes.
You get a lot of pictures like this from your boy?
Yes.
We get 4680. Is this on that trip to Hawaii?
It is.
Thank you. 4681. Prior to your boy's murder, was Hawaii a special place for your family?
It was. We had always dreamed of going to Hawaii, but we had lived in New Jersey the first 12 years of Alex's life, and it was kind of a far trip, plus, funds were tight, and when we finally moved there, we had just adored, when we finally were able to take the trip there, the whole family just had so much fun and so many memories. And when we decided to take Alex and Amanda there in December of 2011, I'm so happy we did that because when I look back, it pretty much turned into the honeymoon that they never were able to have.
Did you and your husband have plans to retire there?
We did.
Object to 401 and 403.
Sustained.
Your Honor, may we approach briefly on that?
Yes. All right, I'm going to reverse my ruling and allow the question. Go ahead, Mr. Bruckler.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, I had asked you if you and your husband had planned to retire there, and I think you had said yes. Is that fair?
Yes.
Did you own some property out there prior to your son's murder?
We did.
Okay, and we'll come back to that. But before we get to July of 2012, I want you to tell us about your son's relationship with his father.
Oh, gosh. They were so close. 3 boys, including my husband, that would be 4 boys. Our house was always just rocking. They would come in and there would be wrestling and rolling and things breaking, and it was a very, very active, loud, joyous household.
Is your husband Tom here with us today?
Yes, he is.
Tell us about his relationship with his mother.
We were very close. Alex was 6 years older than his brother, so we had a lot of time together. He was pretty much an only child for the first 6 years, and we did everything together. I felt it was very, very important to be a stay-at-home mom, so I quit my job, and Tom worked 3 jobs at the time just so I can be home and raise Alex.
I want to take us to July of 2012, specifically the 19th of July. Where were you?
We had taken Tommy and Nick and gone to Hawaii for a vacation.
Did you have any last contact with your son Alex on the 19th?
We texted or spoke every day, so I did.
Tell us about it.
He had sent me a text, and he had just graduated from college, so he says, "Mom, do I get a gift?" And I said, okay, of course. And he had sent me a photo of a dining room set. And I thought, that's kind of odd for a graduation gift, but he and Amanda had just moved into their own apartment. Just 2 weeks before, and they needed a dining room set, and that's what he wanted. So I said, of course. And we were going back and forth, about how does this one look and how does that one look. And he actually went out later that day and bought that dining room set.
Did you know he was going to go to the movies?
No, he had spoke about having trouble getting tickets to go see the movie. He loved superhero movies, and he wanted to go, but I didn't know he was going that night.
Tell us about when and how you became aware that something had happened.
There's a big time difference in Hawaii, and the phone rang about 4 a.m., and I was sleeping, and Tom was sleeping, and he had to get up early for a conference call to the East Coast, so he got up, and I heard him in the kitchen with the phone, and something sounded really off, so I got out of bed and walked out, and he had the phone to his ear, but his face was completely white. All the blood had drained out of his face. And I knew then something was terribly, terribly wrong.
What kind of call was it?
Amanda was on the other end of the phone.
Had she been with him at the theater?
She was.
What'd she tell you?
She said there was a shooting. There was a shooting, and I couldn't wake Alex up. I couldn't wake him up. I tried, and I tried to take him with me, but I was pulled out of the theater. And we were like, well, where is he? Where is he? And she says, I don't know. And Tom said, do you have any blood on you? Because we were trying to figure out if Alex was injured, and she says, yeah, lots.
What do you remember after that?
I remember panicking really bad and getting on my phone to quickly call the police, and from there getting no information and calling area hospitals. And my sister happened to be on a business trip with her husband here and called her. She just happened to be in Denver from New Jersey. And she's a nurse, so she got in her car and started visiting hospitals.
When was it that you became certain that your firstborn son had been murdered?
It was hours and hours and hours, torturous hours, phone calls, and we kind of figured something was really bad because Alex would have dragged himself out of that theater. He would have gotten out. And the only way we knew he would not have made it out is if he was killed. And it took 15 hours before we found out that he was indeed murdered.
I'm going to ask you some questions about the memorial services, but I want to step back just a moment and ask you, how has where you were when you heard that your son had been murdered, and I'm talking about Hawaii, how has that impacted these plans you had with your husband and the property that you owned in Hawaii?
We tried to go back, but my phone was on the nightstand, and Amanda had tried calling me first, but I didn't hear it. And whenever I laid in that bed next to that nightstand and that phone, I would have flashbacks, and at one point I was even out of the room and I heard my phone ringing and screaming coming from my phone, and I ran in and I looked, and there was no missed calls. My phone never rang. We had to sell the property and abandon that dream of retiring there. I can't go back.
Tell us about the memorial services that you had for your son.
We had 4. Alex was born and raised in New Jersey till he was 12. And then we moved to Phoenix, where he went through middle, high, and undergrad. And then he moved to Denver. So we had his initial funeral here. Being Catholic, we wanted that right away for him. And from there, we had to go back to Phoenix and have another memorial service at the Catholic Church there.
Tell us about that one. How many people from his life and the community turned out for that?
Oh, gosh. They estimated between 12 and 1,500 people.
Were there people there that you had seen from different parts of his life that you hadn't seen in a long time?
Yes. From when he moved there to the present, we saw teachers and friends of friends and parents and people I did not even know that knew Alex. Everyone wore blue jeans and a white T-shirt to honor him.
Why?
In high school, that was his standard outfit. He wore blue jeans and a white T-shirt every single day. He said it was easy. Like I said, Alex was very, very laid back, and he didn't put any importance into things. He always called them things. I'm not sure why people want so many things, is what he always said. That was not a priority for him, so he just had a drawer full of white T-shirts and jeans, and he just wore them every day.
Was this the memorial service where the gentleman from Georgia came to tell you about your son sitting with his son in the hospital?
That was the evening before the high school opened up its doors to their students and Alex's former classmates, and had a memorial there where the students got to go up on stage and talk about their memories of Alex.
Even though he hadn't been there in, 7 years?
Right.
Tell us about New Jersey. Similar?
Yes. There was about 12 to 1,500 people there, all in white T-shirts and jeans, and just to turn around and see all those people coming to honor and remember Alex. It was just looked like a sea of angels to me.
I want to talk to you about the impact of your son's murder on your family, individually. First off, and maybe just on the edge of your family, have you had an opportunity to spend time with Amanda and see how your son's murder has affected her?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Oh, she's beyond broken, devastated. Suffers from PTSD among many other things. She had to quit her job. She tried to stay in that apartment that they had just moved into 2 weeks before, as long as she could, but eventually she had to leave that. She could not experience life in the way she had before. Loud noises, being in the public, all those things that come with PTSD.
Is she still part of your family in a way?
Absolutely, she'll always be part of our family. Her parents had divorced, and she and Tom had become really close, and she says, "I wish I had a dad like you." And Alex said, "Well, you know, you can have my dad." And from that time on, Tom considered her like a daughter.
What about her name?
She had approached us and asked if she could legally change her name to Teves. She wanted our blessing, and we gave it to her with our fullest hearts. It was supposed to be, and that's something that Alex wanted, and we wanted to make sure that was fulfilled.
How has your son's murder impacted your youngest son?
Nick is very quiet about it, but I know he's struggling. He misses his brother every second. Alex helped him with so many things. They were able to always knock on his door to his room and go in and talk to him, and he'd help them with so many things because, of course, he had been there and done that as an older brother. When he went to college, they would call him all the time, and he would help them immensely.
How about your middle boy, Tommy?
Tommy's just heartbroken. They were very, very close. Tommy is so strong and so brave. Tommy wants to do everything he can to honor his brother and to stay strong, because Alex was always so brave and strong, and just like that Halloween costume, he just wants to be like Alex. I would say that his life's goal is to be like his brother. And that's not to take away from Tommy. Tommy is his own person, and he's a beautiful person, and he knows that. But he wants to strive to be like his brother. He went into Alex's computer that Alex left behind and found Alex's workout. And he has been doing his workout schedule. And he says, "I'm getting really strong, Mom." And he is.
How is your husband, Tom, different after Alex's murder?
None of us are the same person. He's struggling really hard, just like the rest of us. He misses him with every ounce of his being, like the rest of us. There's a hole. There's a void. He's heartbroken.
Does he seem different to you?
Yes, we're all different.
Mom, I want to ask about his mom, you. But to do that, I want to step back and talk about something that predated his murder. Do you have a physical circumstance that you struggled with even before your son was killed?
Yes, I was having some physical problems, and I went to the doctor, and they were testing me for ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, the ice bucket challenge. Most people have learned about it from that. And it took about a month to know if I would be diagnosed with ALS or if I was okay. And we protect our children, so we kind of keep that stuff away from them. And I didn't talk to Tommy or Nick about it, but I was sitting on the couch with Alex when he was visiting one day, and he knew something was wrong. And I just turned to him and told him what was going on, and he got mad and at the situation. And he came and sat right next to me, and he just took my face in his hands, and he says, "You're going to be okay. It's all right. Stay strong." And the test came back that I did not have ALS, thank God, but I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
Since your son's death, as a result of your son's murder, how has that impacted your ability to deal with Parkinson's?
Stress is the number one progression that can impact progression for Parkinson's disease. So it's progressed quite rapidly since the massacre.
When it progresses, for people that don't know how it impacts you, what are the differences physically for you with Parkinson's?
I'm going to object 401 and 403 due process.
Sustained. You can ask a different question, but I'll sustain the objection as to that particular question.
With the characteristics that come from Parkinson's normally, how have you noticed them worse or exacerbated after the murder of your son?
Same objection.
Why don't counsel approach, please? All right, the objection is sustained. Mr. Bruckler, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, aside from what we were just talking about, tell us how you're different as a result of your son's murder.
This entire I don't know what even to call it. But it's just pure agony. I did not realize that grief turns into physical pain. It hurts your entire being, but it also gives you physical pain. I'm in pain every single day. It's god awful. It's just horrific. I miss everything about him. It's every parent's worst nightmare that's come to fruition.
If you were going to, I'm sorry to ask you to do this, if you were going to come up with a short way to describe in a word or two your son's personality, what words would you choose?
Fierce, kind, caring. If you were in a room with 5 people or 20 people, you would remember Alex. And not because he came into the room that said, look at me, look at me. He would be the person that would just come sit next to you and ask you how you are, who are you, how are you feeling, tell me about your life. He made you feel good about yourself. It was a very unique thing that he can do, and whenever you left him, you wanted to be a better person. He just had a very unique way of doing that with people.
Is there a single thing that you miss most about him? I mean, beyond the daily texts and the calls, I mean, is there something about him that you know is missing?
Alex, I miss his laughter. My worst fear is not being able to remember that. With what I've have to deal with, there's cognitive effects. So every single day, the first thing I do in the morning is replay that laugh in my mind. And we never left each other either on the phone or in person without saying I love you, so I play his voice in my mind every day so I never forget it, because I'm afraid. I'm petrified I'm going to forget what his voice sounds like or his laugh sounds like.
Thank you, ma'am. Your Honor, I don't have any further questions.
All right, thank you. Do you have any questions?
No, Your Honor.
And the jury does not appear to have any questions. May Mrs. Steeves be released from her subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Is there any objection?
No, sir.
Mrs. Steeves, thank you. You can give me those exhibits. Thank you, ma'am. Sure. Thank you. And the people may call their next witness.
Lisa Childress.
Good morning. Could I have you raise your right hand for me, please, so that I can administer an oath? Do you solemnly swear or affirm on the penalty of law that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please be seated. Please tell us your full name for the record and spell your first, middle, and last names.
Lisa, L-I-S-A, Janine, or if my mother would pronounce it Janine, it's Jeannine, Childress, Childress.
All right. Ms. Tisch-McGuire, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Childress, can I ask you to pull that microphone ridiculously close to you, even closer than it is, so the jury
Not
can
a
hear
fan.
you? Thank you. Can you please
Thank
tell the
you.
jury what you do for a living?
I work at Edwards Air Force Base, the Child Development Center. I'm a teacher.
Where do you live?
Palmdale, California.
Are you married?
Yes.
Who are you married to?
Shannon Troy Childress.
Do you have any children?
Yes.
Who are your children?
Jesse Evan Childress, Colin Eric Childress, and Tyler Adam Childress. 3 boys.
Is that the order of their birth?
Yes.
Who is Jesse Childress to you?
He was my oldest one. He was adventuresome, kind, stealthy. But we talked a lot, but there's a lot of stuff that he was like, no, Mom, you're not going to find this out about me. So I'm going to keep it quiet.
Could I please have photograph 4726 that's already been admitted? Is this Jesse?
That is.
Was Jesse a fan of a team that has colors like that?
Yes, this is actually a picture of one of the many, many, many groups, sports groups, other groups that he was involved with. Not sure when he slept, but this was I believe it was flag football.
Thank you. When was Jesse born?
January 5th, 1983.
How old was Jesse when he was murdered?
29.
Where did he grow up?
I was born in Ventura, California, and then we had to move to Ojai, California, which is my hometown, where both his grandparents lived, because my husband had a soccer incident, had a head injury, and he was knocked out for 4.5 days. He was in a coma. So that was when Jesse was 2.5. And so that was one of the many events in our life, stressful events. But we knew the head nurse of the ICU at that hospital was a family friend, so my 2.5-year-old was able to go into ICU, which is generally not allowed. And my husband had lots of brothers. So, and then we moved to Palmdale when we bought our first house, which is the same house we live in currently, because we don't like to move.
What was Jesse like in high school?
He was shy, allegedly. He was quiet, more like. He was involved in loved soccer. He tried to go out for the football team, but he made it through, I don't know, it's like 2 or 3 weeks of Hell Week. But when it came to putting on the equipment, he put on the helmet, and he couldn't stand it. And he came home and told me, Mom, how am I going to tell Dad? I can't tell Dad, because my husband was, super, super athletic and in football and baseball and soccer and you name it, he was in it. So he didn't want to tell his dad. And I said,
Your Honor, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'd object under 401, 403 in due process.
Sustained.
What other sorts of things did Jesse like to do when he was in high school?
He was in
Your Honor, I have the same objection.
Sustained.
What high school did Jesse go to?
Little Rock High School in California.
What did Jesse do after high school?
Well, he was on the graduating program, but he painted himself into the corner and, of all things, was flunking English. So the night before, and he was asked, give me, by me, where's the tickets, where are the tickets, because you have to have tickets to go to the graduation, and you only get so many. So we had his grandparents coming, my mother-in-law, and he had intercepted the mail, told me all the calls from the counselor to my work were, oh, no big deal. So he, for 8 hours, ran away from home with a backpack and I think it was a sleeping bag and like $100. That's not going to get you very far. So after 8 hours, he came home at midnight, walking through the door, crying, saying, Mom, I'm sorry, I was stupid. That was a dumb idea. And I had already called my parents and his grandma and his ex-girlfriend at the time. And
I'm going to make the same objection and add non-responsive.
I think she's answered the question. Ask your next question, please, Mr. McGuire.
What did Jesse decide to do after he left high school?
he came to me and said, because he had a very good friend from, I think he was 5 when he met Trevor, who had signed on the dotted line for the Army. And so Jesse came to me and said, Mom, can I join the Army? Mind you, he'd already seen the recruiter and gone the whole, investigated the whole thing. And he had long blonde hair. And I said, son, you're 18. You're an adult now, so you can make that choice. And he said, yes, but I wanted to get your permission. And I said, okay, because he said, I need more structure. And I said, okay, sounds good. And he scored very high on the ASVAB.
Can you tell a jury what that is?
It's the test that they give you for military to see your basically intelligence level, so what areas of expertise you can go into. And he actually scored, I think it was 80, and he went back because he was mad because the computer wasn't working properly for the math portion, and he scored 5 points higher. So then he was able to choose a more refined grouping of career paths, and he chose satellite communications.
Where did he go during his career in the military? What different places?
Well, after Fort Jackson is the basic training, then there's a
I'm sorry to
year.
interrupt again. May we approach, please?
Yes. The objection is sustained. But Ms. Tisch-McGuire, you may proceed as we discussed.
Where did Jesse eventually end up being based during his last position in the military?
Last position? Okay. He was a reservist and stationed at Buckley.
Was he still in the Army at that time, or was he in a different branch of the military at that time?
Yeah, he was Air Force. He was Air Force reservist because he got out of the Army, then was out for a little bit, and then got into Air Force reservist.
And what was his profession at the time?
Oh, he's gonna roll his eyes in heaven at me. Cyber systems operator. He was the computer IT guy.
Could you tell the jury about Jesse's personality?
He was relaxed but hyper. If there was a Broncos game on, or a Kings game on, or a Clippers game on, sports were big in our family, no matter what's going on.
Would you say that Jesse had a generous spirit?
Yes, he was the oldest, and through his military service, he said, can help you and Dad, and he was basically Santa Claus for his two younger brothers because he was a single guy and earning money, and he also knew how to be downsized, frugal, but pay for Bronco season tickets and eat ramen so he could pay for Broncos season tickets and pay for a house payment and his puppy. So he's very generous with his brothers, myself, his dad, his grandfather, his grandma.
How did Jesse treat others?
But he was very generous, kind, loving, non-judgmental, and just very like a counselor too. He was always counseling somebody, helping him out, whatever the issue was.
Did Jesse like to travel?
He loved to travel. In the Army, his first duty station was Colorado Springs, Peterson. Even though he's in the Army, it's Air Force Base, but it was because of satellite communication, some kind of deal. And that was fantastic for him because he's a huge Broncos fan. Then he did 3 years there and then got an opportunity to go to Landstuhl, Germany, the Army base in Germany. He happened to get very lucky, as he said. He flew in to Frankfurt, Germany, to millions of World Cup fans. So he got to experience the World Cup. Craziness, fun, wonderful time, which just fit right into his calendar of events. And he was there for, till 2009.
Did Jesse have 3 main goals he wanted to accomplish in his last year?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about those goals?
After he hopped out of the Army and decided he wanted to attempt something else, because he had a top-level security clearance, he tried the contractors thing, which you're supposed to make extra money because you have a top-level security clearance. It's in satellite communications area. So he went to, as we called it, the sandbox, the Persian Gulf, to work there. and he made a lot of money in 3 months and was trying to make it work, but he was like, this is not for me. So he got out of that, and his goals were to go back to school, get a house, and a dog.
Did he accomplish all those goals?
He did.
What kind of brother was Jesse to Colin and Tyler?
Generous. They were 3 brothers. They were very competitive. They were always trying to outdo each other, be better. Sports were always going on, whether it was, folding laundry and making a basket with a pair of socks, basketball. Just our house was basically the neighborhood park, because you could come to our house and we had all kinds of sports equipment, so everybody was invited. And once you came to the Children's House, you were family.
What kind of son was Jesse to you and Shannon?
He was just this bright light, and if you were having just a horrible day at work, or you were feeling down, he'd just interject his fabulous humor, and it's my husband's Irish, Dutch, and I'm English, Japanese, Welsh, and it's that sort of British humor that's kind of dry and sarcastic, and he would just interject just a funny little zip, and you're like, oh, I'm back. I'm good. So I miss that, and I miss his laugh and smile.
Can you tell the jury about the last day that you got to spend together with Jesse and Tyler and Colin?
I was here for 2 weeks to hang out. Our last day, where all 3 of my sons were together, we went to Manitou Springs. It's called Manitou Springs Incline, and it's this ridiculous thing that I said, oh, no, you guys, go ahead. I'm going to be down here waiting for you till you're done, because I'm less athletic than all of my husband and all 3 boys. So I like to relax. And they went, Jesse and Colin went halfway up and came back down, because they were like, no, I'm done. We've already done this, because they had to do that, I believe, in the Air Force and Army, where you have to run the thing. But we had to wait for Tyler, because Tyler wanted to go run the whole thing and go the whole way around. So we had to sit there and wait till he was done. And then we went to a Brazilian steakhouse, because that was something that Jesse did. He wanted to taste, all different foods. So we had to try a new restaurant all the time. And that's a tradition that we still do to this day.
And do you remember when that was? In June of 2012?
Yes, June of 2012. I believe it was June 2nd.
Your Honor, if I may approach the witness with what's been marked as People's Exhibits 4719, 4723, 4725, 4727, 4724, 4720, 4721, 4722.
Yes.
Ms. Childers, if you could take a look at those photographs and see if you recognize them.
Yes.
Are they all photographs of Jesse in various different parts of his life?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would move for the admission of all of those photographs.
Your Honor, we have nothing additional.
All right, without any additional objection and based on my previous rulings, all of those exhibits are admitted and may be published. That's P-TR-4719 through 4727, with the exception of 4726.
If I could please have 4719. Do you tell the jury about what this is?
This is Christmas. It was after basic training when he was in AIT, it was a year-long course because of satellite communications. He made it to the end, which is the top level, and that was Christmas, where he got to come home.
Who's in the photograph with Jesse?
That's myself, Jesse in the middle, and my husband,
That's Shannon. Childers.
Shannon Childers, yes.
If I could please have 4723. Tell the jury about this photo.
This is one of my son's many funny expressions. And when I look at this, I was trying to figure out where it was, but I'm guessing it was in Rome, one of his favorite cities. And his facial expression says, Mom, can you guess what city this is?
May I please have 4725? Where is Jesse in this photograph?
He is kneeling down, and he's the one on the bottom. I believe this is one of the many groups, flag football group, and I think this is indoor flag football. I'm not sure. There was an indoor and an outdoor flag football group.
Can I please have 4727? Where's Jesse in this photograph?
He is sprinting. It looks like he's trying to catch the ball. He'd like to play defense and offense. And he's got his little shiny shoes and a cap. He always had a cap that actually looks like a Clippers cap because it's on backwards.
I could please have 4725. Oh, sorry. If I could have 4727. And 4724. Right. You tell the jury what this photograph is?
This is my three sons at the Manitou Incline
And
on their last day together.
Do you tell the jury who's who?
Jesse, of course, is wearing the hat. He's on the left with, I think that's one of his favorite shirts because it's pictured in a lot of photographs. I think it's his Punisher shirt. Collins in the middle with his incognito, I'm not here, sunglasses, and a Batman shirt, as it happens to be. And then that's Tyler, my youngest one, on the right. And that's the one that made it all the way around and ran the whole way. And we had to wait for him.
I could have 4720. Did Jesse have a couple different hiking groups he was friends with?
Yes. I know one of the people in this group. This picture I found on his Yahoo account, and once they cracked the code to get into his laptop, because there was this, stealthy password, of course, and he is wearing a Broncos jersey, of course.
4721. Do you know who the dog is in that photograph with Jesse?
This is one of his hiking groups, and that is Max, his dog that he got.
If I could have 4722.
This picture I chose because that is my son with a mischievous smile on his face and a twinkle in his eyes, and he's on the edge of a cliff.
That kind of describe your son's
Kind of
person?
describes my son. He's, hey, I'm funny, and guess what? I may or may not be on the edge of a cliff, Mom.
Thank you. I want to talk to you about how you learned about your son's murder. Can you please talk to the jury about July 20th of 2012?
Okay. I got a phone call from Colin, and he's reservist and he's stationed down at Peterson, and the Air Force had called him first and said, we're concerned, Jesse's not at work. He may have been in the theater shooting. And I said, what theater shooting? Because normally we have our coffee and watch news every morning, and that morning I was not watching it. And I had to go to the 99-cent store and get some bowls and napkins. We were having a ice cream social at work for the staff. So I'm over there and get this call, and I said, what are you talking about? And Colin said, I have to go up to Buckley Air Force Base and check in with the Air Force folks. And I said, okay, keep me posted. And I handle stress by just saying, okay, I'm still going to go, it's not nothing to worry about. And then Colin called me back and said it was the Batman movie premiere movie. And then I had a little bit less positiveness because I said, of course he was there because he had to be at the premieres because he loved superhero movies. So I'm sure he was there. So my mother's intuition said, okay, of course he was there, but keep me posted, everything's okay, we don't know anything yet, so don't panic. So I went to work, told my bosses, okay, this might be happening. We're not supposed to have cell phones on our person. We have to shut them off. And I told them, I said, I'm going to keep my cell phone in my pocket. So if I get a call, I'm calling you guys to come and relieve me so I can take this call. And that happened not too long after that. And I asked Colin, I said, okay, you guys are out searching the hospitals with the Air Force folks, and do you know anything yet? He said, no, there's, I don't know, it was 70 injured, and there's lists here, there, and everywhere, and so we don't yet know. So it was, again, waiting game. I was like, all right. I said, do I need to go home? Should I go home, or should I stay at work? And he said, no, Mom, you need to go home. And it's about half an hour drive. So that was a very long drive. So I get home, and then it's waiting. Then he calls. He said he's not on any of the lists. He was not in the hospital. I was still, okay, it's all right. He probably crawled out of the back door and he's in a ditch somewhere. He's still alive. Then later, it was dark. I get the call. Um, and Colin says, "Mom, he was one of the 10 in the theater." And my youngest son, Tyler, was on a camping trip that he had just left for like the day before. So I had to figure out, okay, I gotta call Tyler. And by then, my mother-in-law was already there. My father and my new mom, as I called her, Nita, they were at a family reunion in Ohio, so I had to call, get a hold of them. So I was just like, okay, I got to do this. I got to, contact everybody and be efficient, which is kind of how I handle stress.
How many?
I knew my son was gone, and then I get a knock on the door, and here comes Colonel Hoff and the chaplain from Edwards Air Force Base, because they knew I worked there, and they knew, okay, they already knew what was going on. Buckley had called them, and they came in, and I said, "Hey guys, I already know, welcome to the Children's House. Come on in, sit down. Would you like some juice? Blah, blah, blah." I went into mom mode, even though my son was gone.
How many different funerals and memorial services did you have for Jesse?
The first one was at Buckley Air Force Base. Then I call them celebrations of life. We had an invite to Dove Valley, so that was another celebration of life, because Jesse's favorite player was 92 Elvis Dumerville, and he got word, I believe through the Air Force, that Jesse was a fan, season ticket holder the year before, and so we went and we got to meet him. He presented us with a personalized framed jersey from him to our family in honor of Jesse.
What was the next service?
I forgot. In between, there's Buckley, then you go through Aurora, and then we had the military funeral at Fort Logan. And then the Dove Valley thing. Then the Friday after that was the 310th, the unit that he worked with. They had a smaller, more personal, not more personal, but a more downsized funeral with the group and the Air Force folks. Then we had another one after we got back to California with my Edwards Air Force Base family that threw a celebration of life luncheon party. We were presented with quilters made a quilt with Broncos colors, Clippers colors, and then an Air Force insignia on the front. So it's two-sided to honor Jesse and honor our family.
Can you tell the jury about the impact of Jesse's murder on your husband?
Shannon's complete opposite of me. I invite everybody in and want to hug the world and tell them it's okay, and ask them stories. Tell me about your relationship with Jesse. How did you know Jesse, and what is your Jesse story? he doesn't want to talk. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to, we talk about it personally, but he doesn't want to open that door and be out there. He goes on his dirt bike rides. He wears many of Jesse's clothes that came to our house from his. We kind of save everything, especially if it's still good. He still had his shirt from that was taken in a senior photo. My husband wears that. He wears the 3/10 T-shirts. He wears the Air Force pants, jacket. So that's how he comforts himself and surrounds himself in Jesse.
Talk about the impact on your sons, Tyler and Colin.
They're both very quiet, but we remember and celebrate Jesse by going to a Kings game, yelling and screaming at the Broncos. That's my thing. Colin's a Steelers fan, so he doesn't do that. He yells for the Steelers, but remembers Jesse because Jesse gave him tickets, one of his own season tickets, so that Colin could go to the Steelers-Broncos game in 2011. So, and Colin remembers, I believe, he stayed, he was actually living with Jesse in the house, but down in Colorado Springs. So he stayed at the house, we call it Jesse's house still. And remembers him with music.
How has it impacted your father, John Hook?
We talk about Jesse all the time, especially when UCLA is playing and the Broncos are playing, and UCLA football is playing, because they used to Jesse would call my dad and go over what happened in the game, whether it was a good thing or they crashed and burned and lost the game, and what was, the offense, the defense, different plays. He would call from when he was stationed in Germany. He would call my dad, like, "Did you see the UCLA game?" And so that's how we remember.
What do you miss most about Jesse?
Just that. Sports were big. If the game wasn't on in Colorado and it was on in California, I'd be watching the game, and he'd try to get it, of course, on his computer via the internet, however that works. And so we'd be texting each other or call after a great play. I'd be like, "Did you see Damaris's catch at the end of the game for the playoff game?" Screaming and yelling, and he's in the middle of the stadium, so of course he's screaming loud. And in our house, swearing was allowed for particular instances. They were adjectives as an expression of emotion. Good or bad, you were not allowed to swear at your parents or your teachers or, anybody in that manner, but for particular occasions it was appropriate. And my husband's a construction worker, so they heard it. And they also heard it on the soccer field. So.
And is Jesse's grandfather and your son Colin here today with you to support you?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Do you have any cross-examination?
No, sir.
All right, and the jury does not appear to have any questions. May Mrs. Childers be released from her subpoena?
Please, Your Honor.
Is there any objection?
Sir.
Mrs. Childers, thank you. All right, members of the jury, it's about 12, almost 12:25, so let's go ahead and take our lunch break at this time. Please remember all my advisements, they apply during the break, and I want to remind you again that you may not be swayed by emotion. Your decisions in this sentencing hearing may not be the result of any irrational or arbitrary emotional response. Rather, each of your final sentencing verdicts must reflect your individual reasoned moral judgment. All right, we'll be on break for the usual lunch, an hour and a half. Thank you. Please be seated, everyone. The record should reflect that the jury has exited the courtroom. Is there anything that we need to talk about at this time on behalf of the prosecution, Mr. Brockler?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
On behalf of the defense, Ms. Brady? Mr. Brockler, it's my understanding that you're anticipating calling 2 more witnesses. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we had a discussion about whether I would allow more than 1 witness per victim, and so far, the prosecution has only called 1 with respect to the first 11 victims that there has been testimony on. It sounds like you're intending to present 2 witnesses with respect to the 12th. And does the defense want to be heard on that issue?
Your Honor, I'll tell you, my concern is if one victim, particularly the child victim, has 2 people testifying, I mean, it may give the impression to the jury that somehow the court feels that this is more impactful or deserves more attention regarding victim impact. I don't know exactly the reasons for 2. I think Mr. Brockler said the 1 video they intended to introduce through the grandfather. We don't object to that video being played, even if they don't call the grandfather. And so we'll maintain our original objections and leave that up to the court.
All right, and Mr. Brockler, remind me again, you're intending to call Veronica Mosher Sullivan's grandfather and mother, is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
And the grandfather, you're only intending to call him to testify about a kindergarten event, is that correct?
A couple of things, Your Honor. One, he is responsible for the video that we have that we could use of her alive, as well as some of the photographs, including the one of her that we have used thus far throughout the trial. And we would briefly ask him to describe his interactions with her and the impact on him. But obviously we'd like to call her mom.
All right, well, the defense just indicated that they have no objection to to the video being introduced without him testifying, and I'm assuming that applies to the photographs as well.
Yes, sir.
So that takes care of that point.
Well, it does, Your Honor, respectfully, with the exception that it doesn't set the stage for what led up to those pictures or that video, because Ashley Mosher wasn't there for those things. They would just be a video of her daughter at a Christmas event she wasn't there for, and pictures that were taken that she wasn't there for. And there'd be no way to describe or set the stage for that.
And the reason she wasn't there again is because she was attending a funeral, is that right?
Yes, sir, for the graduation. She was attending her grandfather's funeral. And that, I think that highlights the other part of this. This is a different portion of the family that the grandfather represents. It's not Ashley's father, and it would give a different, albeit limited, perspective. And the only other thing I'd say, Judge, is that we have taken to heart the court's admonitions. I think we've done a good faith and fair job of that. And my concern now is because we've done that, now we hear that, well, now if you want to, even under these unique circumstances, now that will create the prejudice that you've cut back to one on everyone else. And I would ask the court in this limited circumstance for these reasons to give us a little more leeway.
Okay. I'll think about it over the lunch hour. Is there anything else before we take our break?
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right. We'll be on break. Thank you. The court will be in recess.